So here's the big question. How do you assess a management team? Now, there are a lot of different schools of thought, and honestly, like assessing management teams can be a very qualitative experience, which makes it challenging to have a scientific approach towards it, right? A lot of VCs will be like, oh, I just kind of go off my gut, or I get a feel for the person, or in some cases, they do have like a matrix that they might follow. But today, I'm going to talk about one of the ways in which I evaluate management teams that I think and I hope is really helpful to you as well. So in Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, he talks about one of his favorite interview questions. And that question is, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? And he goes on to say that and explain how this is a very, very difficult question to answer correctly. And the reason for that is because we all go through school, we all learn basically the same things, and by, almost definition, there's a lot of consensus around what we learn on a day-to-day basis. But the people that are going to take society and technology from 0 to 1, or in other words, are going to create brand new industries, new technologies, new ways of thinking about things, and ultimately have a fundamental impact on society and economies and how we live our lives, are the people that are able to answer this question. And their answer to this question is what many call an earned secret. So the idea behind an earned secret is it's something that you've had to put in time and energy to learn. Either you learned it because you spent a ton of time collecting data and making connections from that data, right? This is the idea of innovation, that the innovation is the intersection of two different disciplines. You have to have spent time in these two disciplines to see where they could potentially connect and create something new. The other way to gain an earned secret is you spend a lot of time in an industry or a sector or experience where you are able to see a pain point that no other individual is able to see, or a unique way to solve that pain point that no one else can see. A great example of this is Airbnb, and I use Airbnb because everyone's familiar with it. When the founders started the company, their earned secret was that people were willing to sleep in other people's homes and pay for the privilege, and that people would be willing to let a total stranger come in and sleep in their house for a relatively small amount of money. The secret they learned in part by looking at sites like couchsurfing.com and others. This was their earned secret, right? And a lot of VCs, tons of VCs, laughed them out of the room when they went out to fundraise. But they knew that what they had was true, even though very few people agreed upon it. And because it actually was true, they built what has now become Airbnb, this massively successful, hugely impactful business that has fundamentally changed how people travel, where they sleep, how they generate income, all kinds of things, right? That's what you're ultimately looking for in a management team, is one that can go from 0 to 1, and that they have earned this secret. So how do you know if they have actually earned the secret? Let me give you another example. So I looked at a business a while ago where the founder had built this incredible technology that used ice cream as thermal batteries to regulate temperatures within large freezers in grocery stores. Now that's kind of this crazy idea, right? But the reason that he had figured this out is because he had grown up in the grocery business. His family had owned a grocery store. He was very familiar with the fact that the freezers that are used in grocery stores break down all the time. And the reason for that is because there had been a massive amount of consolidation to the point that there were only 2 major freezer manufacturers for grocery stores. And both of them compete on price, pushing down the quality of the product to the bare minimum. What that meant was it is not uncommon for these freezers to break down. And when they break down, grocery stores can lose tons of money. And it can be a massive threat to the overall health and survivability of the grocery store, because grocery stores generally rely on very thin margins. So what he went and did is he built a really interesting technology that would monitor the health of the freezer and then use the ice cream and the other frozen goods to create thermal batteries that when the power did go out, they could maintain a constant freezing temperature and save the grocery store from failing. Now, that is kind of a very niche case, but a very good example of an earned secret where he had put in the time and energy to know that, right? Very, very few people know about that particular circumstance, right? And yet he was able to identify what is a huge pain point for the grocery industry and find a unique and compelling way to solve that. So just to quickly recap, if you want to assess great management teams that are going to fundamentally change the world, you want to look for management teams that have earned, and it's a secret, right? They have some knowledge that most people don't have. They are going to come out and disrupt an industry. If it was obvious, everybody would do it, right? And therein lies some of the risk of venture capital investing. You actually have to believe that the secret that they believe is true is actually true. And sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And one of the tricky things about an earned secret is that if it's truly a secret, not very many people know about it, and it's very hard to verify until you've actually launched the product, right? Because it's a fundamental shift in terms of how we view the world. How do you know if somebody has a real earned secret or not? Well, like I said, one way is to look and see what kind of experiences they've had. Another is to look at how does the truth that they have fit in with the general needs that we have as a society. At the end of the day, there are only so many basic needs that people have. And so if you can understand what those basic needs are, you can then verify some of these, or at least intellectually verify some of these earned secrets. I'll give you another example. There's a company called OkCupid in the dating space. And one of their big aha moments was that they could take two seemingly uncorrelated things, put them together, and pick your ideal match. Maybe it was, what kind of movies do you like, paired with, do you like spicy food or not? And by pulling in all of that data, they were able to identify better matches, romantic matches for their users. They had earned that secret by being able to pull in tons and tons of data across their platform by allowing their users to ask all kinds of questions, right? That's another example of taking the time to build up the institutional knowledge that's really hard for others to replicate. And what's hard for them to replicate too is that if you want to compete with OkCupid and come up with similar type results, you have to generate all of that data. And then you have to analyze it, and you have to be able to say, the spicy food is this, carries this kind of correlation weight relative to what kind of movies somebody likes when determining who's the right fit. Anyways, hopefully that was a helpful understanding of earned secrets and maybe changes the way that you interact with management teams. Lots of management teams are coming up with an idea that's incrementally better, right? I see this all the time. And for me as a venture investor, although it's easy to understand how something could be incrementally better and get excited about it, ultimately those aren't the businesses that are going to change the world, right? I remember after Airbnb came out, one of the companies that I met with, and there were several of these out there, was like, hey, there's an Airbnb, there's VRBO, there's all these different, platforms. What we do is we consolidate them all into one search portal, right? And if you think about it, like their whole value pitch was only incrementally better, right? They weren't the ones that were actually creating the 0 to 1 shift. And frankly, like you look at that business and you're like, I can see how that's incrementally better, but it's never going to be the massive business that an Airbnb is, right? And so when you're evaluating companies, be thinking about, is this company going from 0 to 1? Are they creating a fundamental shift, or is it an incremental one? And if it's a fundamental shift, it's going to be super risky. But if they pull it off, it could be a massive, massive home run, which is really what venture capital is all about. We're looking for home runs. We are swinging for the fences on every deal because that's how we make money in this industry and how the industry functions on this power law distribution. So anyways, thanks for joining me today. Hopefully this was interesting. If you have questions or comments, please leave them below. And join me for our next Venture School course where we're going to talk about what makes an attractive market size.